Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Maddie Schmidt, and today I'm joined by Pro Football Focus senior college analyst, Anthony Treash. How are you?
Doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. I appreciate you hopping on the call today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about the Chargers football in general. Just looking at, before I was hopping on, I was thinking about all the offseason moves. I mean, obviously they had like the best offseason, put out a bunch of stuff with that. And just going back, looking at their depth chart on paper, the defense, it's just absurd. So, I mean, I'm excited just as a general football fan to see what this team can do next year.
Me too. It's crazy the moves they've made. What's been the most biggest surprise for you with them this offseason?
Ooh, I don't know if anything's too surprising. I mean, obviously, some of the moves they made, I wouldn't have really projected. Khalil Mack, it makes sense with the Brandon Staley connection, of course, him being his position coach when he was with the Chicago Bears. But, I was expecting them to be an aggressive team, and they've certainly been aggressive, of course, acquiring Mack, also signing, J.C. Jackson, the cornerback from New England, to a massive deal. Just been a ball hawk over the last few years, and also some underrated moves mixed in there. I really like what they did with Bryce Callahan, bringing him in. I think one of the best slot cornerbacks in the NFL when healthy, and he's proven to play at a very high level in this type of defense that Brandon Staley runs. So, I don't think anything is too surprising with what they've done. Expected them to be aggressive, and they certainly have. So they're setting themselves up. There's no doubt about that.
The Chargers have definitely been busy this offseason, as I'm sure you have been too over at PFF. Tell me, what's been the most interesting project you've been working on?
Well, right now just actually wrapped up our college football preview guide. It won't be as extensive in the past, but we wanted to hit on just the most important points. So we took the big picture idea of all 65 Power 5 teams. That's including Notre Dame, and actually even the ones that are joining here next year, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, and BYU. And just kind of broke down who they are, why are they going to be what they are this upcoming season. So that'll be coming out over the next few weeks. So that's been kind of, a bulk of my time. That's for sure after the draft season. But, looking forward to the college season, doing some other stuff with behind the scenes here at PFF with the research and development department and some of the networks we work with as well. So definitely been busy, but the preview guide that I just wrapped up definitely taken up a bulk of my time, that's for sure, especially with this crazy college football off season. That's, hopefully we get some breaks in there. I think coaches from who I've talked to, they think they're coming and they really hope they're coming for that transfer window. But that's definitely been the most of my time.
I'm curious, what exactly is a day in the life of a college football analyst like?
Yeah, it definitely depends. So in the off season, it kind of depends on the time, right? Because the NFL draft, definitely draft focus. It's like, it can be long days, working in football. But in season, it'll be a little bit different this year. But in the past, of course, it would just be nonstop football, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. All nighters, just kind of try to dive into our database, PFF Ultimate, that all 32 NFL teams and every Power 5 program uses. We get that film early, and it's pretty easy to burn through and break down everything. And you have all the data there thanks to our wonderful data collection team. So, a day is it's kind of hard to pinpoint because all of them are different. But, this upcoming season will be a little bit different for me, working a little bit more behind the scenes. So I'm very excited about that.
What would you say is one thing most people don't understand about your job?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And I think one that probably doesn't get asked enough is just like, I think there's a lot of, with PFF, a lot of people just kind of pile on thinking like it's groupthink, like we're a cult and we all just come together and form these ideas, and where they're just kind of ingrained to us and we stick with it. And that's not the case. Like, we disagree all the time. And, it's actually hard to kind of find consensus in some areas. And it's a lot of people think like, oh, PFF, this guy's the highest graded. They think he's the best player. It's like, that's not really the case. You kind of have to look at the situation, and especially at the collegiate level, right? I mean, I think the grades are a great resource. They're stable year to year. I think they're a good leading indicator, right? And you kind of dive into it a little bit more, because just because this guy's the highest graded tackle doesn't necessarily mean, he's the best tackle in college football. You kind of have to go into, how did he get there, right? How did he earn that? Did it come against, UL Monroe, or did it come against Oklahoma that he's facing, right? Some of those schools, or was it because he was protected in a scheme, which in college you'll see We actually just got done talking about it ad nauseum, which Chargers didn't have to worry about because they had the quarterback set in stone. But like some of these offenses, Sam Howell, Matt Corral, those draft prospects, big knock on them. They just ran an offense that was kind of holding their hand and kind of held other people's hands too, like the offensive lineman, not a lot of true pass sets. So, that's kind of one example there. And, kind of going off on a tangent here, but like that's another area where the NFL coaches absolutely despise college football because sometimes it's hard to get a read on those guys. But I would say that's kind of the one thing where a lot of people just kind of assume that everyone here, it's just a cult. We all agree on everything. It's not necessarily that. The grades, they're not the be all end all. But like I said, they're a good leading indicator as to who did the best and whether or not you should kind of take stock in that or say it's a little bit fluky and expect them to kind of come back.
Lots of details and lots of factors go into it. Thanks for sharing that, Anthony. Okay, so we probably should move into some more Chargers related questions just because I know a lot of LA fans are watching this right now. So let's backtrack to the draft for a little bit. Were there any Chargers draft picks that you were surprised with?
I wouldn't say anything too surprising. I thought with what they did up the top with Zion Johnson, that was kind of one where a lot of people expected him, weren't be too surprised, and that's where I thought they would end up going, and they ended up doing it. I thought it's a good pick for them, just considering their offensive line has some very high quality pieces, right? I mean, Corey Linsley, obviously one of the best centers in the NFL. Rashawn Slater, what he did as a rookie last year. I mean, you're just not going to see, and I think I've like talked to different fan bases about their offensive linemen that they've drafted this year high, and it's like, hey, don't expect him to be Rashawn Slater because what he did last year you don't really see from rookies. So I think he has all pro capabilities in him. But of course, there's still some missing spots there. And Zion Johnson, he fills that void. I think he's a high floor, safe prospect. I mean, he's just an experienced player. Very good player at Boston College, but he really opened up my eyes at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he was pretty much a brick wall. He really held his own against some of the top competition there. And you never want to put too much investment into the Senior Bowl. I think that's almost like kind of verifies what right? And if you see something different, you go back to the tape, but you go back to Boston College. I mean, the guy was the same thing. He was just a brick wall. He was good as a pass and run blocker there. So I think he's going to be a good spot there at guard and kind of gives them options there. I'm still curious to see, what kind of happens with the rest of the offensive line outside of Johnson, Linsley, and Slater. I think, they have some options there at tackle. Really what Storm Norton out there, in my opinion, after what we saw last year. Matt Filer has experience playing tackle. He's done it at a high level. He did it for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, I think there's some, different, ways they can maneuver around that offensive line. You have some experience too with some of those guards that could play tackle. So, I think that was definitely my favorite pick that they made. One of my favorite picks of the first round. I just thought they kind of hit the nail on the head there. So I don't think they did anything too surprising there. Of course, I wasn't a big fan of Isaiah Spiller coming out. I think that's kind of the sweet spot for the running back position on day 3. Just you're throwing darts at that point. If you can get someone on the football field, that's a plus. So, I mean, even though it's an invaluable position, they kind of attacked it at the right spot. But for me, I wasn't, he wasn't a player that I was too really high on. So, but, at the end of the day, I thought it was a good draft for him. Nothing too surprising, kind of, as expected there. And I think they did a good job.
Yeah, Chargers fans are definitely high on Zion Johnson. What do you think they can expect from him in his rookie year?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think you could just expect high floor, play. I don't necessarily think he can be, he could be an elite player. I just think he's going to be a very solid, consistent guard. I mean, that's what he was this past year. I think he allowed no pressures in over half of his games played, which is pretty hard to do. And, even in the offense he was in, he didn't necessarily was protected as some of these other guys too. He was very rarely penalized. Very disciplined player, and just kind of a well-oiled machine at this point. So I think that's kind of the expectation. You never want to put, like I said, expectations of just amazing play like Rashawn Slater. I don't think he's going to be, the greatest rookie in the NFL, but I think he's going to be, kind of above the rookie average there for his position. I think he's going to be able to hold his own. I don't think you're going to see him be a liability at any point. Maybe he has a couple of rough games, any rookie does really in the NFL. But at the end of the day, you piecing together the whole course of the season, I expect him to be, kind of, an above average offensive guard for the Los Angeles Chargers as a rookie.
Looking at the draft as a whole, do you regularly see teams choose from one college versus another more frequently?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting question. You definitely see some teams kind of go after it. I was actually I think yeah, New Orleans Saints podcast a couple weeks ago, and the host there mentioned New Orleans loves Ohio State and Tennessee. Those two schools they love. So you definitely can kind of see that there with some of the developmental guys, and it is also correlated with recruiting success, just because a lot of you'll go back and look at all the 5 stars in history. It's pretty rare not to see one of those 5 stars at least get drafted, because they're 5 stars, because they're just freak specimens. And it doesn't matter if they have success in college, they're still going to get an opportunity because they're rare in some form or fashion, compared to others at their position. So you definitely see that kind of trend there. But then of course you just see some teams, they don't necessarily care. I mean, a lot of these teams don't think, we love Ohio State more than anything, we're going to make sure we target guys from that school. But you definitely can kind of see some trends there, and I think that correlates to the recruiting factor.
Yeah, under Telesco with the Chargers, it seems like they seem to favor Notre Dame, but that's transitioned a bit to Georgia players under Staley, which I found interesting personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's the recruiting factor. Those are the two blue blood programs. So I think that has something to do with it, and I think also the coaches that are there too. That's something I didn't mention. I mean, you look at those two staffs. I mean, of course, Notre Dame's changed a little bit over the years. Now Marcus Freeman, the head coach, but I mean, very high quality staffs, right? They're getting the right coaching. Georgia, that is the best coaching staff in college football last year. They won the national championship, obviously because of all the freak specimens, all those 5 stars I was talking about that they had, but also they know how to coach. Kirby Smart's one of the best coaches in the game. And, the defense coordinator, Dan Lanning, now the head coach at Oregon, he does a good job. Glenn Schumann, he was the off-ball linebacker, inside linebacker coach for him, now co-defensive coordinator with Will Muschamp, former South Carolina head coach. So, I mean, there's a lot of talent there in those coaching staff. So I think that does also kind of play a part into it.
The Chargers, another trend, the Chargers have transitioned into drafting linemen with excellent PFF pass blocking efficiency ratings. How well does that metric translate over to the pro level?
Oh, very well. I mean, I would say, there's some stuff within, so cornerbacks, for example, it's very volatile year to year, right? Just because someone graded out at a high level last year doesn't mean that they're going to do it again this year, just because of the nature of the position. But offensive lineman, that's the position more than anything that, that the correlation year to year is very, very strong, right? I mean, you see someone grade out well, you typically see that trend continue unless something that can be explained, whether it's an injury, a position switch, something of that nature, kind of goes into that. Or you also see it with different quarterbacks, right? Because, playing for, someone like Mac Jones versus, Lamar Jackson is completely different in their play styles, right? I mean, you're going to have someone that holds onto the ball because they know they can escape for a little bit longer, kind of stresses out the offensive line, versus someone that's going to get it out quickly. Both great quarterbacks, but in their different ways. But the offensive linemen, they kind of have to, handle the situations differently. And so, going back to your original question, the offensive lineman grades, pass blocking and run blocking, those are very strong year to year. So, I mean, I think that's the one thing where, teams use our database every day. And it's kind of at their own discretion. They use it for whatever they want. They use the raw data. They use the actual database that we have, that we built. They can watch the film easily. I wouldn't say, no team completely shuts out the grades. And I think a lot of teams kind of, don't believe in it. I think that's the old fashioned coaches, right? Some of the older guys, that's when you don't know the play call type of stuff comes in. But some of those, I think, more innovative teams, they understand that it's not the be all end all. And they know, okay, there's something here. Why is it there? Right. And that's when I go back to the leading indicator stuff, where they kind of look into it. So, the pass blocking grades and pass blocking efficiency, that is a very strong correlation year to year. And, you do have to look at the offense by design too. And that's where it can kind of get interesting at, college football, kind of like I said, because, all offensive linemen are in different situations, but it's a little bit different in the NFL. That's where it's even stronger, just because you're not necessarily seeing offenses that are completely different, right? I mean, all of the offenses are obviously not the same, but you're not getting someone like, you're not getting like an Ole Miss, versus, Mississippi State or, Arkansas. Those are completely different offenses and what they do. The offensive linemen are asked to do different things. So, it's stronger at the NFL level, but, that's the thing I would probably say PFF prides itself, the most on is just the offensive linemen, how we, grade them, because I think that's probably in a world where there's really not a lot of metrics on offensive linemen. I think ours is really, it's second to none. I think it's the best out there and not even close.
Yeah, and those guys are essential. The Chargers know that, trying to get people for Justin Herbert. Moving on, you mentioned Ole Miss, Mississippi State. I'm a Florida Gator alum, and I love college football. So tell me, Anthony, what can I expect from the Gators under head coach Billy Napier this fall?
It's a good question. I think they're kind of a boomer bust team, and that has to go with the quarterback position, Anthony Richardson. I thought the whole situation with Dan Mullen was very interesting. I got a firsthand look at it because one of my colleagues, Trevor Sikkema, watching college football with him on the weekends in the office, he would just he couldn't watch Florida. He would just kind of storm out sometimes.
I can
Because he
relate.
kind of people were frustrated with how everything went, and rightfully so. And I thought it was interesting why he put Emory Jones in there. Obviously, Emory had a lot of hype. I thought he would do well. He didn't end up doing that well now at Arizona State. And Anthony Richardson wasn't playing early on. A lot of people were like, why is he not going there? I mean, I remember, what was it, the USF game, right? I mean, he had those couple highlight moments, and you kind of look at it like, well, he kind of was just playing schoolyard football there. And Dan Mullen said that's why we're not putting him in. He just kind of disregarded the entire play call and went out there. And you saw it when he did get some playing time down the stretch. You kind of started to see that play style come back to bite him a little bit, going up against stiffer competition. And he definitely has the tools. I mean, he is, he was a 4-star recruit. I mean, he can play, the position at a high level if he pieces it all together. Just kind of piecing it all together and getting that decision making kind of honed in there and understanding. You see quarterbacks, I would say this is probably the biggest thing, and especially in today's age with like 7-on-7 and all this stuff, and some of these guys with the way they play the game, just very undisciplined in the way they play, right? They just want to go out there, put the Superman cape on, and go out there and make a play on their own, where it's like, you got to follow the script sometimes. So that's what I'm kind of looking for with Anthony Richardson. And I think if he can piece it together, then Florida may exceed expectations sooner rather than later. But at the end of the day, they do kind of are say where they were last year, they're an average team. I'm very bullish on their future. I think Billy Napier is going to do a fantastic job there. I love the defensive coordinator they have there with Patrick Toney, co-defensive coordinator there for him. He came over with Napier from Louisiana, led Louisiana to one of the best defenses in college football. Florida, of course, last year's defense was not good. I think, probably it's ingrained into your brain and every other Florida fan brain. The Samford game, that was bad, really bad from a defensive standpoint. So I don't think we're going to see those performances this year. I think they're going to be one of the more improved defenses in college football. But what really holds the cards there is Anthony Richardson. So I'm curious to see. I'm kind of leaning towards, I'm not so sure he's going to be the first round talent that kind of some people are expecting him to be from a preseason perspective, but hopefully he proves me wrong. Like I said, he's got the tools. So I would, if I were a Florida fan, and I'm telling you this, I'm telling Travis this, telling everybody this, I would be hopeful, cautiously optimistic for this year, but hopeful that, in the future, things are going to change, because I'm very much believing that Billy Napier will do that.
Well, I hope they change fast. Thank you so much, Anthony, for joining me today on the podcast. I really appreciate it and appreciate all the insight that you shared with us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.